Okay. Well, good afternoon, everyone, and I hope that everyone is joining us feeling safe and healthy this afternoon. And I want to welcome you to the Chamber's Pacesetters Doing Business with series. I'm Jim Rooney, President and CEO of the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce. And today we're going to talk about doing business with John Hancock as part of this series that we started a few months back. That's intended to help all of us maybe communicate better, bring more transparency to the procurement process of larger companies in the greater Boston area. Some of the feedback we heard from small businesses of color that it can be a mystery understanding how to work with big companies, what their procurement process is, how to get in the door. And so this series attempts to take the mystery out of all of that. We know that doing business with minority businesses is an act of economic inclusion. So we are determined to enhance and elevate increased spending on a local, on a state and national level by the business community with businesses owned by people of color. So that's what this is all about. Now more than ever, this type of effort is necessary. We're very pleased under the leadership of Bea Jimenez on our team that the Pacesetters program recently announced its statewide expansion. So you'll be hearing more and more of how we're going to do that and just continue to elevate and energize this program. A few notes before we begin the program. I want to give a big thank you to the program sponsor, Eastern Bank, and today's host for their sponsorship, John Hancock. John Hancock not only helps to sponsor the Pacesetters program, but all of the economic opportunity work at the Chamber. And, I would say having collaborated over many years with John Hancock, this is not something new to them. And you can just look at the many, many programs and ways that John Hancock engages within the community, programs like the MLK Scholars, and in other ways that for years, John Hancock has said, you know what, this is an important issue for us as an employer and as a business in Boston. So thank you for doing that. I want to flag that this webinar is being recorded and will be shared on the Chamber's YouTube page shortly after the presentation. There will be time for questions, so use the Q&A feature on your Zoom and make sure to send the question to all panelists. You can also email questions to chamberprograms.com, chamberprograms@bostonchamber.com, and our staff will get the questions to me. So now I'm going to introduce the speakers from John Hancock, and I'm very pleased to introduce first Mary Ann Harrison, who, by virtue of just being here, is demonstrating how important this is to John Hancock. Mary Ann is the president and CEO of John Hancock, the U.S. division of Toronto-based Manulife Financial Corporation. Mary Ann is based in Boston and has responsibility for all aspects of John Hancock's operations. So what does that mean? As one of the largest life insurers and fastest growing asset managers in the United States, John Hancock supports approximately 10 million Americans. That's 10 million Americans with a broad range of financial products, including life insurance, annuities, investment, 401k plans, and college savings plans. We're very grateful for the leadership that Mary Ann brings to John Hancock and to the Boston community. Next, we have Tom Crohan. Tom is Vice President and Counsel for Corporate Responsibility and Government Relations at John Hancock, the United States division of Toronto-based Manulife. And Tom oversees the company's corporate responsibility strategy, which includes sustainability, community investments, and employee engagement initiatives. So thank you for all of the work you do and for joining us today, Tom. Next, we're pleased to welcome Gaurav Seni, Chief Procurement Officer at John Hancock. As Chief Procurement Officer, Gaurav's role spans all aspects of vendor management globally at John Hancock, from cost effectiveness to risk management and process efficiency. And today he'll share with the audience how John Hancock's team manages all aspects of their procurement. And lastly, we have Phil Hirsch. Phil is Supplier Diversity Officer at John Hancock, celebrating 20 years with the company. Congratulations, Phil. He's held multiple positions within procurement, leading the charge of growing the company's supplier diversity program is his most fulfilling role to date. So Phil, I know, understands the importance of providing opportunities to a supplier base of diverse members of our community. So thank you for joining us, Phil. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mary Ann and Tom and get the program started.
Great, thanks so much, Jim, and hi, everybody. It's certainly a pleasure to be here today to join this group, and thank you all for being here. You know, Jim mentioned it's very difficult for companies to actually connect up with some of the small businesses, and I've often heard small businesses have a very hard time getting into the big companies. So I think organizations that are doing things like this, it's actually perfect for both groups. You know, at John Hancock, we're certainly on a DEI journey. You know, it's one that we've been on for a while now. And, you know, when we speak of diversity, we're really referring to the different ways that we're all human. You know, we talk about equity, we refer to fair treatment, we talk about access, opportunity for advancement for everybody, regardless of their differences. And when we speak about inclusion within our organization, we're really talking about belonging and thriving for all the ways that we are different. You know, we're continually striving to integrate all of these aspects into our culture and our workplace at John Hancock. And we've made some significant investments in this space. You know, we're doing things like increasing the representation of diverse talent at all levels of the organization. I also have joined on the CEO Action for Diversity and Inclusion, and we've partnered with YW Boston to help us foster a really meaningful dialogue within the organization and really allow people an opportunity to speak openly about some of the challenges that they face and how we can all work together better. You know, I certainly believe that creating partnerships with businesses like all of you is really important. And it's a step in that journey that I talk about in terms of our DEI journey. You know, our goal really is to promote a more inclusive approach to procurement through a strong supplier diversity program. And thanks to the Chamber for organizing the Pacesetters, because I think this is a great opportunity to do just that. You know, we really want to support people of color, LGBTQ, and disability-owned businesses, and including those run by women, veterans, and small business owners. So it's really trying to cover the whole gambit so that, like I said earlier, large companies like ourselves can work with small businesses and really help to bring those partnerships together. You know, not only is the program going to improve the experience for our customers that we have with us, and it's going to strengthen our business, but it's ultimately going to benefit the community in which we all operate. So a very important initiative. So to everybody that's tuning in today, thank you very much for being here, and thank you for everything that you do. You know, your diverse skill sets really bring value, and we certainly look forward to working with you and to achieving our shared goals and building a more equitable, sustainable community. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Gaurav Seni, who's our Chief Procurement Officer, and Phil Hirsch, our Supply Diversity Officer at Manulife and John Hancock, to discuss our plans in a little bit more detail. So over to you two.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mary Ann, for taking the time to come here. It means a lot to the community, and really appreciate your help. And thank you, Jim and Yasmin, for this wonderful opportunity. If you have the document, you can turn it to page 5, and I can kick the program off. So everybody here, big welcome from my side. Once again, my name is Gaurav Seni, and I am the Chief Procurement Officer at Manulife John Hancock. Actually, some of you may not know, but John Hancock is actually part of a larger family named Manulife. It is the largest Canadian insurance company. And we overall, if you look at the entire conglomerate, we have over 38,000 people and over 100,000 agents around the world. A leading provider, of course, you know, in US with John Hancock brand. In Asia, we are in 10 different countries and growing rapidly. Canada, we've been there for about 100 years. And really, I have been here only for about a year or so. It's an absolutely wonderful company, very values-driven culture. To give you a little bit around the procurement profile, and I'll talk about it more on the next page, we have about $3 billion in sourceable spend across various types of categories that you can think of. So you have IT expenses, workforce expenses and corporate expenses, typical for a company of our size. So that's kind of our spend profile. We also have a vendor risk program, very mature vendor risk and vendor management program, which takes care of all the onboarding and financial risk assessment. And then we have a centralized shared services function, which has all the strategy, systems, and supplier diversity. All in all, we are roughly a group of about 150 people globally. And I'm very proud to be leading this group and being part of this team. About 20 of my top leaders are actually on this call because we believe that supplier diversity is an extremely important element of our overall sourcing strategy and what we are trying to get done here. Just to brief background on myself personally, I grew up in Delhi, in India, and I'm a mechanical engineer by education. I consider myself diverse in some respects because I'm a first-generation immigrant. I came here for higher studies almost about 25 years back. And, fortunately, things have worked out really well. I've been very lucky. It has been truly a lot of opportunities have come my way. My career has been very different than I would say most of you around, because you guys are entrepreneurs who've started small businesses and have done well. Either you are on the call or you're working for somebody who runs the business. My career has been more on the corporate side. I was at McKinsey. I started my career there for about 10 years. Then I switched to banking about 10 years back, and I was Chief Procurement Officer at Morgan Stanley in New York. And that's where I got really passionate about this topic of supplier diversity. And we really built up a program in about 5 years where we had close to 5% of our spend going with diverse vendors. And that was, it took a lot of hard work in getting your name out in the community, building the processes, educating people, sponsoring events, and genuinely caring about having diverse suppliers in our supply base. And I and my team would like to replicate the same thing at Manulife and John Hancock. And the reasons this is important to me personally is because, although I do not have experience like most of you running small businesses, I'm quite familiar with the challenges that you all must be facing. My wife is from actually Greater Boston area, and my in-laws, they also had a small business, and fortunately they're in very good place right now. But a small business is very different than a corporate job like myself, right? Some years are good, where things are going very well, and you're spending, and other years you're saving your business because things have just disappeared. And it's the programs like this, I believe, that really provide you a fair opportunity. And what I can say is nothing is going to be easy. You have to compete for businesses. It's a capitalist economy at the end of the day. But our job will be to help you out, provide you with the right opportunities at the right time, help you guide through the process, help you make the necessary connections, and give you all chances that you can succeed. Once you have all that help from us, you have that structure in place, and you have a compelling value proposition, there will be wins that you will be able to enjoy. And it will be, as I said, a slow and a hard process, but we are here to support you. So as a first step of that, I think Phil is an outstanding leader in our organization who is very passionate about supplier diversity. We have recently done some reorganization and we've created a supplier diversity department, which Phil is which he's heading. He's already made some significant changes in the organization around policies and so on, which he'll talk about. We are also very well connected with the overall DEI, diversity inclusion initiative within Manulife and sustainability initiatives, because these topics are very well interlinked. So with that, I want to pass it over to Phil, who will get into some specifics around what we have done and what we plan to do. Thank you. Phil, over to you.
Thank you, Gaurav. So hello, everybody. I'm really excited that we have this opportunity to do what we're doing today. This is actually our very first external opportunity to really, be able to connect with our suppliers that are part of Pacesetters, an opportunity for our own procurement team and other teams within John Hancock to really kind of see what we're all about. Before I start, though, I also absolutely need to thank Pacesetters for the great job that they're doing, and this program in particular. Absolute shout out to Bea. Behind the scenes, once in a while, you have some technical glitches. She's been amazing. I could not have asked for any better cooperation and partnership getting this together. So thank you. So why don't I just give you a little bit about me so you kind of know where I'm coming from. As Jim mentioned, I am in my 20th year at John Hancock Manulife. From day one, I've considered myself very lucky to have been able to get into a company that consistently throughout the years, I've been very proud to be able to say that I am a member of the team. Born and bred, hold on, it says, can you guys see me now?
Phil, I cannot see you. Bea, can you see him?
We can't see you, Phil. I don't know if you have a way to, there you go.
Yeah, now it's better. Now we can see you.
Sorry. A little bit more about me. I am born and bred in Boston. Boston is my home. I'm proud to be a Bostonian, which makes doing this kind of a program even more special. As far as my work history, I've always been in procurement, and I've kind of come up in the ranks in procurement within the company. But prior to that, again, in procurement, I was primarily in the apparel industry, which it was a really fun industry, but this was a great opportunity, and I have not looked back. And I guess lastly, just so you know, if I have one real passion in life, it is animal welfare and dogs and pets in general. Anybody that knows me knows that that's really what I'm all about. So with that said, if we can move on to, yes, the next slide, please. Perfect. So what I wanted to start out with is and a little history of the program. So we have had a supplier diversity program for a number of years, but I also have to thank Gaurav because when Gaurav came into the company, really the emphasis and the importance of the program took on a new meaning, and very grateful for that. So it's been about 8 months, I think, since I've taken the job over full time. And so this slide actually represents some recent wins as we build our program. We are considering it really in its early stages, and we know we have a journey, but we're on the road. So when we talk about supply chain excellence, what we really are looking at where to improve access to diverse suppliers. We have made some inroads there. We are fortifying our infrastructure to accommodate our needs. And policy support, we've added language in our procurement policy to specifically include diverse suppliers in our RFP bidding process. I think that's really important. I'm thrilled that we now have that in place. Community collaboration. We really have gone the distance to not just work in a silo, but we are doing community collaboration. We're partnering with key business areas. In particular, and Gaurav touched upon it, we're not just including sustainability in our supplier diversity efforts. We're really partnering together. There's a synergy there that I'm surprised more companies don't do, but it makes good sense for us. And I think that we're going to be able to help each other's area quite a bit. In addition, we are partnering with HR, DEI, corporate responsibility. So we really do get the full value of being able to support the program the way we want to support it. And one of the things we said early on was that for this to be really successful, leadership needs to become our cheerleaders. It's really working well, and I think there's no better evidence than having Marianne open up. I thought that was terrific. But we really are getting leaders to understand the value and embrace it, and again, be the cheerleader. So customer satisfaction. We identify and leverage industry best practices, and it's strong team focused always. And we're also looking to create opportunities for diverse suppliers to grow and thrive. I mean, that's like one of the main end goals here. And then lastly, brand enhancement. One of the things we did was we looked at our supplier diversity information on our John Hancock website, johnhancock.com. We beefed it up. We have a registration portal there that's more comprehensive now. We're hoping very soon that we're actually going to have the same presence on the manulife.com website up in Canada. And lastly, and it really is, I don't see how you can really have a great program if you are not connected to the right corporate memberships, if you're not partnering. It's a two-way street of learning there that I think is very, very important. If we can go to the next slide. So now this slide really represents what we're going to be working on. We have much more work to do to really bring it up to what we call the gold standard, and that is definitely our objective here. So our strategy, we do have an aspirational target of 4 to 7% supplier diversity spend over the next 5 years. We want to tap into the 3 streams of potential business that Gaurav alluded to, which at a high level is IT, non-IT, and professional services. Internal communications. This is a great example of an external communication, but internal, we're going to be doing roadshows with leaders and those responsible for making purchasing decisions. We've started that. We have a lot more that we want to do over the next year. Rolling communications, incorporating change management disciplines, because there really is a level of change management here for people to fully understand and grasp what the importance is of the supplier diversity program. One of the things that we're really going to be looking at coming up in the new year, beginning of the new year, is data enrichment, spend analytics, and KPIs. We need to make sure we do have the support and the infrastructure in place so that when our contract managers in the business and our category managers, many who are on the phone right now, when they're looking to really find a diverse supplier to include in the bidding process, we want to make sure they have a good base to choose from. And finally, external communication. And that means, on my part, attend meetings, conferences, panels, industry groups, events, and forums. I have done it in the past, but not to any level that we're going to be doing in the future. Of course, with COVID, it's all virtual now, but I'm actually really looking forward, for many reasons, to be able to get out and go to these in person, because that really is the best way to connect with your peers, to really make that connection that, again, it's a two-way street that we can all learn from. And finally, we're going to be hosting supplier lunch and learns and meet and greets in the upcoming year. So we talked about corporate memberships, and I'm really proud that we have this portfolio that we're showing right now. We've built it quite a bit over, again, since Gaurav came into Manulife John Hancock. So that includes, of course, the Greater Boston Chamber of Commerce, Pacesetters, NGLCC, which is the National LGBT Chamber of Commerce, NAVOBA, which is the National Veteran-Owned Business Association, Center for Women Enterprise, Greater New England Minority Supplier Diversity Council, Disability In, and one that some of you may not be as familiar with is FSRSD, which is the Financial Services Roundtable for Supplier Diversity. And this is something that is very specific to the financial industry, where those of us that are responsible for the supplier diversity program can get together and trade challenges, wins, hints and tips, and anything that can help us elevate our program. So this is what I'm sure a lot of the suppliers on the phone are very much forward to learn about. So this is really a look into the world of how we choose a supplier. And these are the steps that will help determine the best supplier to deliver success. So we actually have broken it down into two areas. There's the business area, which has our contract managers that will be responsible for purchasing, that will be working with our procurement team. So it really does start in the business. So the very first step is they need to determine what they are looking for, and then get a budget approved. And from there, once they have all this information, we have a tool that is for everybody and anybody to go into. It's some very basic, simple questions that they enter into this procurement tool. And then based on that information, based on dollar value, based on risk to the company, based on industry, it gets routed to the proper folks who will then run in conjunction with the business, unless it is something that is run specifically by procurement, and bring it through the RFP, the bidding process, all the way to fruition to a contract. And in procurement, what the underlying process there is, of course, the RFX, and which can be an RFP, RFQ, RFI. And then there is a series of the meetings, the demos, proof of concept, vendor scorecard, all the things that you really need to do to really flush out who the best supplier would be. Once you have that determined, there's contract negotiations and the business is awarded. There's vendor selection and then ongoing vendor management. So it's really a full life cycle from the start to ongoing vendor management. So it doesn't just end when a vendor is selected and a contract signed. So drilling down, some of the things that we look for in a supplier that we believe will increase their chance of success. I think most of them are common sense, but integrity is really important. Aligning with our value and culture. Expertise. Delivery capabilities. Innovation. We really do look for suppliers that can bring something to the table that potentially nobody else can. General excellence. Reliability. Of course, value and cost savings. financial stability, and regulatory compliance. There's a host of others, but these are some of the top ones that we feel does make a well-rounded, good supplier for the company. So as we're getting close to the end, I thought it was worth sharing a story. I hope people find it as heartwarming and actually a really good news story that we internally did. So as you can imagine, with COVID, there was a lot of pressure put on the procurement folk for various protective gear, mask, you name it. You can imagine all the things that we would need that when we ultimately bring our employees back to work, they can come to a safe environment. So there was an effort to really find, it started out with potentially a mask, but masks that would be both comfortable and safe. So our objective was finding masks for our employees when they were able to return to the office. Like I said, they needed to fit different face sizes and shapes. So when we looked at the process of how to do this, and it's not always the easiest, but our procurement team worked with government relations and sustainability across North America to access databases of certified diverse suppliers. It was great that they specifically were looking for diverse suppliers. I want to point that out. So happy to hear that. Each supplier had unique mask styles that needed to be sampled. And what they ended up with for a solution, they actually ended up with 2 different masks. One was from a minority-owned business that makes high-end neckties and pocket squares, and the other a woman-owned company who customized a design to our specifications. Both masks are designed to be both protective and comfortable. So we really, this actually made our internal news within John Hancock Manulife, because we do think it was such an important story. And what it does is it combines really the effort and the need to look for something that if you jumped back before March, wasn't really even on the scope of things, and that we're able to award business to diverse suppliers. So we look forward to fighting the good fight together. That's kind of been my call to arms. So what can you do? And it's really about staying connected. So what I first would recommend, if you haven't gone to our website, if you haven't registered in our portal, please do. It's johnhancock.com. Click on the Supplier Diversity link, and then you can go right to register. There's a spot to provide lots of information from your company as well. So also, as we go into the new year, I just wanted to kind of give a heads up of the events that we're going to be doing for you to be on the lookout. And we will make sure that through Pacesetters, everybody will be well informed. So we're thinking it's called Getting to Know John Hancock, and it's going to be an open forum where questions can be asked and answered. It's going to be very casual, but a good opportunity. We're going to be doing meet and greets, and we're also even going to be doing some mentoring sessions. So basically, if you have any questions, and we are growing the program. We have a ways to go. We've made some really good progress over this past almost year, but we're really excited as we grow. The program grows, and the opportunities will grow. In the end, I will be your contact. Consider me your liaison. I can be reached at phirsch@jhancock.com. And I just want to thank everybody for attending. Hope that you found this worthwhile. And I'm going to hand it back to Jim for questions.
Well, thank you, Phil. Thank you, Gerard, for the presentation, and thankfully our Q&A feature is working, and people have already started populating with questions. Phil, thanks for providing your contact information for everyone to see and to have. So let me start it off with a couple of questions. One is that popped up is any near-term opportunities, Phil or Gerard, that you would put on people's radar screens in any of the categories that you mentioned during your presentation? And I know you mentioned, Phil, logging on and registering on the website so that people kind of are on your list and you get to know them and maybe they can reach out to you. But how do people on an ongoing basis, how are they made aware when opportunities are going to come down the pipeline? So anything near term, and how do people on an ongoing basis get to know what's coming?
So what I can tell you is, let's go to that registration portal for a minute. So we gather that information, and it's a new process that we're doing, but we will be sharing that list with our people making the buying decisions on a regular basis. So it is well worthwhile to go there. I don't think I can speak specifically to anything near term. I don't know, Gaurav, if...
Yeah. So thank you, Jim, for that question. Look, at a given point of time, my estimate is there are about 30 to 50 active RFPs or sourcing events that are going on at any given point, right? If you think about it, we have at least about, of the 150 people that we have, about 50 people are actively negotiating deals, whether they are renewals that are coming up, or there are new services across the three categories that we mentioned: hardware, software services in IT, professional services, contingents, contractors, and then non-IT, anything ranging from, marketing and HR, and real estate and so on and so forth. So there is a lot of activity happening. Some of them are the ones where, those areas are such niche or governed by like very big vendors, right? If you think about the Microsofts of the world, where it would be hard for, a minority supplier to compete. But having said that, there are a lot of, smaller opportunities that continue happening. So there are a few that we have just closed, and I don't want to go public with it because we haven't made a decision, and we are actually very close to selecting a couple of minority suppliers for it, and it takes time. I think the best process would be that people or suppliers should reach out to Phil, because this game is about building a database, right? This game is about building a database and knowledge and connections around who's out there who can potentially be considered for an RFP or an event, right? And start building those connections. And then my guys, these 50 people who are negotiating deals, we have put in a policy that every time you're going out with an RFP, you have to have one or two diverse suppliers if they exist. So they will come to Phil and they'll say, Phil, I'm doing this is the scope. Who do you have? He'll start making the connections. And as we evolve, we'll build in automation in the process and workflow. But right now we'll do it the old fashioned way. Yes, I know of these 2-3 suppliers, go talk to them. There'll be meetings. We'll advise you on how to reply to the RFP and what's needed and what it takes to pre-qualify. And that's how we'll start it organically.
Right.
And can I just for 1 second, just off of what Gaurav said, if you want to just let me know what your business is and your contact info, that's great. But I would recommend the more information you can give me, if you have a presentation, a portfolio on the company, anything that you can give me that will help the procurement folk take a deep look upon first glance, I would recommend that.
Right. Joab, just to follow up, you mentioned that, you're a big company and some of your contracts are big. Mm-hmm. When you have a situation like that, Microsoft or other big supplier, do you make requirements of them in their sort of subcontracts or second tier supply, that when they come to you, that they have MBE suppliers as part of their contract doing business with you?
Typically, yes, right? There is this tier 2, the concept of tier 2 on what you would expect them from a sustainability and diversity perspective. Those expectations are there in the RFP and in the contracting process. Yes.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know specifically whether we are that far yet where we have put them in here, but in my previous role, we had that because it's a matter of managing the supply chain, of saying, who's your diversity. And by the way, I'm sure we get asked those questions also, because when we are competing for businesses, people are asking, what are you doing?
Yeah, that's great. So Phil, on your last slide, you had mention of, I think, a mentorship program. Am I right? Was something?
Correct.
Yeah. So there was a question in the Q&As about this too, and I'd like to give you the opportunity to expand on that. And just by way of context, part of the Pacesetters program is not just that companies do a one-off contract to buy some service or some product, but actually that you use the words, and I loved hearing it, develop partnerships, develop relationships so that, that MBE can grow and maybe do more business with you or someone else in your industry or in other industries. So I'd love to hear more, and I know the audience would too, about the mentor program and, what that entails.
Absolutely. So we are still developing it, but what I can tell you is it's not going to just be about a widget that you may sell or a service that you may sell. There will be mentoring about product and things like that, but it's also, I think it's just as important presentation. How to build a deck that when you do have an opportunity, you're wowing people, things of that nature. So it's more of a well-rounded look, but at the same time, giving them that glimpse into again, all the different things. It's like that crock pot that you need to put all the right elements in to get a perfect stew. Well, I guess I always go to a food analogy, sorry, but I kind of look at it as the same. So to try to be as well-rounded as a supplier as possible.
Yeah, and to that end, Phil, have you developed a practice of, giving feedback to unsuccessful MBE bidders to say, look, you were almost there, but here's a couple of factors that held you back, and whether it's the presentation, whether it's some other dimension that didn't meet those criteria that you might have spelled out. Are you giving feedback to unsuccessful MBEs?
So if the MBE is actually in the bidding process, that is whether it doesn't matter. All suppliers, they do get feedback. It's a courtesy to do that. But I am happy, as I'm looking forward to those that are on the phone and on the call to send information and to get to know them and to chat. We will be free with our assessment and advice.
Yeah. In the spirit of sort of, this being competitive, I mean, it is. Sometimes it's difficult for MBEs to compete on price. And I'm wondering sort of, how do you think about that? You mentioned having metrics and KPIs that would sort of direct the procurement activities and so forth. And a lot of times that's get me the lowest price, that sort of thing. How do you factor that in?
I have done this a lot at my previous role also. That actually is I haven't found that to be that true, that they cannot compete on price, right? Usually it becomes about, are you following all the risk processes? Do you check the box on all the risk elements that we have? Do you have the right capability? Can you scale up? Few times the decisions have come up to me that we have an MBE supplier and it's a little bit higher, and what can we do? And we did the right decisions. And I'm sure once we get here also, we'll make the right considerations, because this is a core part of our program. But I haven't actually seen in my past 8 or 10 years where it's like, 20% off, 30% off, right? It's none of it's that kind of things don't happen. Actually, being an MBE supplier is sometimes more competitive. You may not believe it because they are more hungry, they have a lower overhead structure, and typically, like I've seen it in architectural companies who help with their design type work. I have seen it in construction, like a lot of women-owned businesses in New York. They competed and they competed well, and they were actually better than the others. And of course, staffing business, we all know, right? It's there, it's all about networking and finding the right talent at the right time. That's another one where I found them to be competitive. So I think I don't see that, but if it happens, we'll make the right decision.
Yeah. So along those lines, sometimes the contract terms are an obstacle. I mean, I'm thinking payment terms.
Mhm.
MBE, a company that might put out an RFP with 90 days. I mean, they can't.
Yeah.
I mean, do you negotiate those things, or how do you approach those?
Typically we have standard terms, and it is like all negotiations. It's not just one line item. If we look at the overall mix, and if it helps a given supplier to cut it down to 20, 30, or whatever the number they want, we'll work with them, right? Sometimes cash is important, sometimes it's not important, sometimes you worry more about the price, so we'll work with them. Within reason, we'll be as flexible as we can.
Okay. Bill, I think you might have prompted this comment. Opportunities for food and beverage suppliers or distributors. I don't know what kind of sort of catering or food service supply work that you guys do within your operations, but any opportunities in your portfolio for that, those types of suppliers?
So I actually don't have the names off the top of my head, but I can tell you we've actually had some good fortune in that particular area. Our category manager, Matt, has done a great job. And I do think there are opportunities coming along.
Okay. Some of these questions are a little redundant, but a lot of interest in the mentorship and supplier development aspects, Phil, of your program. So I think that you've struck a chord by mentioning that you're developing that mentorship program. So congratulations there.
Well, I'm glad to hear it. That means we're on the right track.
Yeah, that's what I'm reading into these questions. There's a follow-up question, I think, about the second tier suppliers and the degree to which, maybe someone on this call, how would they find out or be exposed to opportunities that might be in a second tier category?
Yeah, that will be, we'll need to think through how we,
Yeah.
how we structure that, because we can request our first tier suppliers to have certain percentage in their supply base and evaluate them on them.
Yeah.
But when do they go out with their sourcing decision?
Yeah.
When does that happen? We don't control that, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
Unless it is a pure pass-through type arrangement where as part of the deal, they are going to subcontract with a bunch of companies and we control that decision, right?
Right.
That's why that may be a little bit challenging to push.
Yeah. Like Phil, you mentioned, I was very impressed with Mary Ann deciding to open up today's session. I mean, that speaks to CEO leadership on, and one of the things we've learned in the Pacesetters program is that for these things to get done, it starts at the top, and that's a clear demonstration that within John Hancock, this is starting at the top. I'm wondering from you, Phil, Jarav, from your perspective, the importance of having that kind of leadership, as opposed to, I mean, Phil, you mentioned the importance of partnerships within the company, and it's a lot easier when the CEO says, get this stuff done, than having to pound on the door and try to sort of, convince people that it's the right thing to do. Could you talk about the importance of having that kind of culture?
Well, I think Gaurav can answer.
Yeah.
But I will tell you that I've already seen my job become easier as leaders are embracing. So to me, it's key, it's vital, and I think we're on the right path to really get that kind of, I call it cheerleader, but to get that cooperation that we need.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say, Jim, it like all things, it starts from the top, and I was so happy when Marianne took the time to come here. Just so you know, she's in all-day executive leadership meetings, and she was on the agenda to present, and she moved some meetings around. I said, I just need like 10 minutes from you. And she was very happy to do that. And that says a lot, right? That we are not just talking about it, but we want to make a difference. So the leadership is aligned, but at the same time, look, I interact with them quite a bit. They expect once they have set the direction, they want to see some results and they want to see some traction, right? And they want to see some passion from the next 2 or 3 layers down. And in these things, nothing succeeds like success, right? So you have to start small. You have to have 1 or 2 or 3 wins. You need to communicate them, market them, create a platform, demonstrate the metrics, get the troops excited, right? Like people need to feel that this is, this should become the muscle memory, right? That every time you are going out to suppliers, hey, have you thought about supplier diversity? Hey, have you called Phil? And Phil should say, hey, I heard of this RFP. I know of this supplier. Why are we not doing it? That's how these things become, in 3-4 years, this thing becomes so natural that it's like saying that, oh, we need to buy something. Do we have a contract? It's as natural as that. So leadership is supportive, but to be fair to them, they would like to see some traction. And that's why events like this are very important. Building a name in the community is very important. Developing the leaders who care about this is very important. Creating platforms from there is important. Having metrics, all the elements that, Jim, I know you talked about it in the last session. Those things, and people need to be really passionate about it, right? It's not, you can't force people into these things. People have to genuinely wanting to do this and spending time on this. Only then things happen. If you do it as a hobby, then it becomes just like a good thing to talk about. But I personally want to do more because I've done it, and it has huge dividends. I had so many success stories in my prior life. I remember one where there was this expert consultant who had a unique way of doing some invoice analysis, and which could save us a lot of money. And it was a small women-owned business. I met her at one of these events. We had a few meetings. We gave her a little pilot to work for. She did very well. We gave her a couple of $1 million project. Again, did extremely well. And guess what? They became so big that they were bought by one of the biggest companies. And she ended up being, make a few $1 million on the transaction. So that was a really good success story of how small things can lead to very good big things. And nothing is easy, but we have to keep trying it.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm going to wrap up with one final question based on something you said, Jirav, at the beginning, which is you have to compete. And I'd like you to speak to the supplier community now, because you've obviously communicated that you're a willing buyer and you want to do business and you want to make this work. What's your advice? I mean, I've heard other people in your position talk about, persistence. You said you have to compete. I've used the phrase business, not goodwill. What's your message, or what would you say to those in the supplier community, given that you want to be their partner? What's your message to them?
Message to them is, number one, really sharpen your value proposition. Why should anybody buy services from you? Why should they become your partner? get that elevator pitch and the story right around differentiation. That's point number one. Point number two, you all have very scarce resources, right? You're not big companies, having, hundreds of people running around with sales forces. So be very selective around where you want to spend your time and build the relationship. In banking, insurance, all these like professional services type companies, relationships matter. How you show up, how much time you invest spending time with people. Ultimately, it's a people business. So invest your time in relationships, building the relationships, and that's why you have to be very strategic around where you want to spend the time. And then third thing I'd say is there has to be an element of resiliency, right? Which is you will get knocked down 2, 3, 4, 5 times, but guess what? It is hard. I mean, that's a given, right? It's not going to be easy. It won't be that, what we'll ensure is you get a fair shot and we'll coach you on how to win. But ultimately you'll have to win. Nothing would be given on a silver platter. And it's actually better because even in long term, if you cannot compete, we are working in a capitalist economy, right? If you cannot compete, you don't have a right to win. As simple as that. So, and big is not always good. I've seen very big companies who are very sloppy. So nimble and sharp and agility is important. And that's why you're in a small business and you're doing well.
Well, Gerard, that's a great note to end on. Thank you, Phil. Thank you, Tom. Thank you, Mary Ann, for your time and your openness in communicating your approach to doing business. It was really terrific from my end. Before I close, and thank you, Bea Jimenez, for our director of this program and for creating all of the wonderful dimensions of the Pacesetters program. Our next Doing Business with series will be on December 17th, where we'll talk to the folks from Comcast about doing business with Comcast. You can register for this program and much more by visiting bostonchamber.com. Once again, thank you to the folks from John Hancock and to our audience today for joining us and for asking some great questions, and have a great rest of the evening and week.